Hello, my name is Bridie Moore. I'm from the School of English at the University of Sheffield in the theatre department, and this is Claire McManus, who's also in the same school, and we're going to talk today about Passages Theatre Company. Which is a group of older people over the age of 60 who are co-researchers in my PhD research, which is into age and ageing in performance. It's an AHRC funded PhD project, and we formed a group of people who are making and researching performance, researching age through performance, trying to make work about what it's like to have lived to a point where you're older, what it's like to be older now, and also looking at metaphors, narratives of ageing, and trying to find ways in which ageing can be explored in performance.
When I was 17.
So first of all, I'm going to ask Claire, who's one of the participants, but who also has research experience, having done an MA at the School of English, what it's been like being part of the Passages Theatre Group.
I think, well, one of the things is also I used to be an actress and I've always worked in the arts, so I also, everybody in the group brings a lot of lived experience to the company. So I've got the research and I've got the theatre and now the sort of academic that add to it as well. I think one of the things that's interesting about the group is what I think Bridie's done very cleverly is taken into account how you actually work towards performances with a group of older people, because there are all sorts of things that people have commitments to grandchildren, some people go off and teach for a month every year in Portugal, people are ill and sometimes quite seriously ill, so it's how you work towards a performance with the flexibility around rehearsals and workshop times that allows people to drop in and drop out, but still gives that momentum towards working towards a performance. And that's very different from any other group I've ever worked in. And also working very much with people's capabilities, because as I've said, I mean, people come with all sorts of different lived experience. So a few people have got some experience of performance, a few with some sort of Amdram experience. A lot of people got absolutely no experience at all. But what Bridie's done is create a format where everybody can contribute. It's not about the people who know how to act, because also it's not about acting as such, it's about performing, in which there's a subtle difference, which we probably talk about later. Yeah. So it's really interesting for me because it's a very different way and a very interesting way of working.
Yeah, so it's really, there's a lot of improvisation in the process, but also in the performance.
Yes, yes.
So the performances are quite loose. There's a sort of structure, and there are set things, anchor points to get to, some set pieces. But within that, there's a real room for flexibility and for debate and discussion, both amongst the cast members and the wider audience as well, because we're really developing quite a participatory type of performance. So it's halfway between a workshop and a performance. And our last show was quite intimate, wasn't it? It had about 15 members of the audience and about 9 or 10 members of cast. And it moved around, so people moved around the space. So it was a bit, not quite promenade theatre, but that sort of thing. And
also, can I say that, because one of the things a lot of people think about theatre is, oh, how do you learn those lines? And because it's I mean, the people in the company range from 60 to 86.
Yes.
And people do worry about, oh, don't give me lines because I'll forget them. But actually, the way we work, as Bridie's described, it's not about remembering lines because it's not imposed on people. You're not having to learn something that somebody else has written for you, because it all comes from people's experience and people speak in their own words. And so that they don't have to, they just have to be in the moment of what they're doing. They don't have to worry about learning something that's been put on them from outside. That's very different as well.
Yeah, I think that's been one of my real discoveries, actually. Because I've always worked in scripted theatre. It's always been, you know, proper plays, drama as such. And what I've been doing as part of my thesis is actually been trying to re-examine my own theatre practice, trying to shift my own theatre practice. So trying to prove that you can teach an old dog new tricks. I'm the old dog. And that's really both helped me as a theatre maker, but also helped me to see that older people who may have been very similar to me only imagined performance as drama, as characters in a play with a storyline. They've been able to incorporate these new forms and completely take on board all these new methods and ideas. So it's been really exciting.
It's very contemporary theatre, which is really exciting that it's a group of older people doing contemporary theatre. Yeah, it's good.
It is, isn't it? And in the future then, so we're thinking about maybe working towards building this group of people who can then facilitate other groups of people. So we've done some performances in sheltered housing, in sort of more public areas like the Winter Gardens in Sheffield, and we've taken it into community centres, and always as an element of debate and inclusion and participation with the audience, so that it really is a sparks debate about older people, about ageing, about images of ageing people, about gender and age and all of those things.
Because there's, I think something important about the content of what we do is because even though it's a smallish group of white, older, relatively middle class, mostly women at the moment, there are huge differences in what people think about their own ageing, in ageing generally, in ageing stereotypes. Yeah. And so one of the things that's really important about the group is it's not presenting an image of ageing. What it's presenting is people saying, this is what it means to me now, this is what it means to me. And that also feeds out into the relationships with the audience, because we want the audience to be thinking about their own ageing, but also about the ageing of the people that's in front of them.
Yeah. I think that something that Michelle Rickett said in a presentation yesterday was that just the fact that there was an older person performing on stage is a new image of ageing, because it's very rare that you see, especially a community group that's just full of older people. You know, that's a really rare sight, and it provides a new way of seeing older people, I think.
Yeah, and when we did the very first performance, we did a preview of it to lots of the postgrad students at the university, and one of the feedback comments there was, just seeing all these older bodies moving so gracefully in space, you just realise that you don't see it.
Great sense of freedom comes from it, doesn't it? Yeah,
yeah.
Definitely. I think also that the groups become quite a good support network for each other as well, hasn't it? It's not just been an artistic endeavour, it's been a social endeavour as well. And I think also an idea that people can go forward and maybe start something new that's very important in the world. You know, if we do manage to keep the group going beyond my PhD project, then that's hopefully going to be something that can be taken into any sort of setting, and there can be maybe mutual training of these people with the people who are they're meeting in new settings, and maybe there might be other groups start from this. Quite good.
And I think people have, as I said, have experience, so they do lots of different things anyway. But I mean, there's actually a play reading group has formed out of passages. People meet up to go to the theatre together. People have been started going into sort of other productions. So it's sort of kick-started little ripples, if you can kick-start a ripple. You see my metaphors.
It's been throwing a stone into the pond there, definitely. What I liked as well is the fact, as you said, there's multifarious, multifaceted sort of acceptance of ageing and exploration of ageing. So we've not just explored positive ageing, we've explored the negative aspects of ageing. So we've tried to think about ways in which, you know, people might contemplate loneliness or dementia, how they've already coped with relatives who've had dementia and things like that. And also to incorporate, again, the people who come to see the show, to incorporate their experiences and worries, fears about ageing, as well as their positive experiences. Yeah.
Because there's no sort of rule that says this has got to be a jolly, fun, entertaining show or workshop, because sometimes it's that, but also people want to look at very serious and very sad subjects sometimes, and that can be held within the group, and I think that's really important. And the last show we did, we actually had a couple of people talking about their fears of dementia because of a history of dementia in their family, so that it was a very present sort of threat for them.
Yeah.
And to actually have the courage to stand up in public and present that and talk about that, I think only came after a lot of working with the group, that they felt held, because actually that's one aspect. My research was in dementia in theatre, but one aspect of dementia that isn't really looked at is that thing of the second generation of people who've cared for parents, seen their families go, their parents or someone in their family go down that sort of dementia decline, and then think there's a very real possibility of it happening to themselves.
Yeah.
And to actually be able to give voice to that and the space to explore that, I think is really interesting.
Yeah. So, what have you enjoyed most? What's been the most sort of inspiring, or the thing that's made you smile the most about the actual performance, the pieces that we've made?
I think there were some pieces that we did that were about first memories. And in a way I'm reluctant to say that, because that immediately creates a stereotype of, yes, it's an older people's group, they're going to be reminiscing. And it's not about that. It was about people going right back to their earliest memory and then enacting that. And the rest of the group kind of enacting that with them, either responding or echoing it or whatever. And there were just fantastic stories came from that. And there were people, and this was one of the very earliest exercises we did, and people in that who really had never performed, who said, I can't do that. Yeah. Because they were telling their own stories and they were so focused in on themselves and what had happened. They just gave these wonderful performances about the story. You could see, the mother, you could hear Father Christmas shouting down the chimney, it was so graphic what they were doing, and it sparked off so much in the audience as well, about people thinking about their first memories, because younger people have first memories as well. It's not just a thing about older people. Yeah. And again, some of them were sad, and some of them were funny, and some of them were cute, because they're not all the same, and they don't have to be the same. Yeah. And also people had the liberty, if they were something very frightening or too personal, they didn't have to expose that at all. I mean, it was up to them what they did. So they were really good fun.
Yeah, they were. And it was wonderful how when we got the good trust between everybody, how people would suddenly embody the mother and then break away, let that fade away, or embody the Father Christmas figure who, was peering through the window, or whatever it was, whichever story, or the guests in the house when you put the record on. Yes. There's one particular story where the first memory was about being able to work a gramophone, and everybody's saying, what a clever boy. And there's an 83-year-old man standing there, and everybody's going, what a clever boy.
But he did go on to be a headmaster, you see, so he was a clever boy.
He was a clever boy. And I think that was a really good starting point as well, wasn't it? So there has been some ways in which we've worked through ideas that could become a method for working with any people, but certainly with older people through theatre, I think. And that first memory piece was quite a nice one. That developed just out of a sort of an inkling, a hint, a sort of possibility. But yeah, we worked quite a nice method of approaching those, didn't we?
But also that really fed into the flexibility idea, because if somebody wasn't there on a given performance, well, you just get their story out, or occasionally somebody else might do it and do their own version of it. So again, it wasn't people having to, you've got to learn somebody else's lines because we have to have this bit in, else the plot doesn't work, because the structure doesn't work like that. The structure is, at this point, we're having the first memories, and whoever's there does the first memories in a particular order, but it's very fluid and it's very flexible. And again, and we've done that in a very theatrical performance, and we've done it in a community centre, and we've done it in the open air. So you can really play with the form once you've got it, which is great.
Yeah, and we were looking at Erikson and his 8 stages of life, and we tried to find stories that depicted those stages or those transitions. Some of them were really apt, and some of them maybe not so much, and were challenged and things. But when that particular person wasn't there, what was really nice was someone could step in and tell that story as if it was theirs, because it had grown out of the group and it had been owned by the group. So the story about the watch, borrowing the watch, stealing the watch and taking it to school, and then the mother of the person being really quite annoyed and shaking the child. That story is a story that everybody can understand and believe in. Yeah. And each person, I think we've had 3 people tell that story, and I can't even remember whose story it actually is now.
But I think that's also part of the trust within the group, that because some of their stories are quite personal, but people are actually quite comfortable about somebody else coming in and telling their story if they're not there to do it. There's not a sense of, "Oh, that's mine," or he's going to muck it up, or she's going to make a mess of it or something.
Yeah.
So there's a real kind of shared ownership of them now, which
Yeah.
I think is really nice.
Yeah. And it's not just about stories as well, is it? Because what we're doing, we're not just doing a sort of reminiscence project or storytelling project. We're trying to find images that somehow break open the idea of ageing, break open the idea of identity living across time. So we've used, one of the things for me, which I'm most proud of finding, is this image that incorporates two aspects of ageing theory, really, which is the idea of the mask of ageing, and also the idea of the mirror stage of old age, which is Kathleen Woodward's insight into the idea of age being something that once you see your aged face in the mirror, you sort of lose your sense of your own identity. You become outside representation. So we worked a piece where we had a masked figures looking at themselves in mirrors, and then they broke out of that by making a description of themselves, by actually speaking out a description of their own face, their own body, and owning that description and not denying their age, by saying, you know, this is what it's like to be old, this is what it feels like, this is what it looks like, this is how I assess myself, and then losing that mask and being able to sort of dance with their own reflection. I really, for me, that's probably one of the proudest things I've found.
Yeah.
And where did we end up? Sheffield. Where's Sheffield?
So
Were you in Sheffield?
No, I'm in Worksop. She was there.
I think what's a real strength, and what I've learnt a lot about, is that there is no answer. We don't have to have an answer. There's no final definitive performance of ageing or performance of age. It's more about exploring all these different ideas, all the different angles at which you can think about ageing, experience, literature, narratives, images.
And people's attitudes, because some people are quite happy to announce their age and other people aren't, and other people say, well, I'm whatever, but but I'm fine and healthy, and other people say, well, it doesn't mean anything to me at all, but actually all those feelings and all their viewpoints are perfectly valid and are kind of held in the performances. Because sometimes, I mean, as an older woman now myself, you can feel that within in the space of one day, you can go through all those sort of different feelings. So certainly with a group of people, you can go through them all. And I think that's important for other people watching, that they can see that ageing is multifaceted. There's not, we're not breaking stereotypes in order to create another stereotype. We're breaking stereotypes in order to say we're people and we all have very different views, and depending where we are and where we come from.
And what mood we're in today.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, that's really good. It's really nice to have had you as a participant, Claire.
I really enjoyed it.
And it's been great to have the others as participants as well. And they have really seriously been co-researchers, being older people themselves. Thank you very much.